Okay, so picture this. You're walking downtown, right? And you see all those empty office buildings, maybe even the one you used to work in before everybody went remote.
Oh, yeah.
And, they're just sitting there empty.
Yeah.
But what if instead of cubicles and water coolers, those office towers were bursting with fresh lettuce and tomatoes?
Now that's an image.
Right. We're going deep on vertical farming today.
Very cool.
All based on this article we found called Fra kontor till salat, grøn, løsning till tomme, erhvervsejendomme.
Okay.
Which basically means from office to salad.
Catchy.
It is pretty catchy. And that's kind of what we're talking about today, this idea of turning all these abandoned offices into urban farms.
It's a fascinating idea and definitely a timely one.
Absolutely. I mean, the article cites some pretty wild statistics.
Oh, yeah.
Like by the end of 2024, almost 20% of office spaces in the U.S. were just sitting empty.
Wow.
That's a lot of empty space.
That's a huge amount of potential for growing food.
Yeah, exactly.
And some cities were hit even harder than that.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Phoenix, for example, had an office vacancy rate of over 33%.
Wow, a third of their office buildings are just empty.
It's wild.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. So what happened? How did we get here?
Well, the pandemic really shook things up.
Yeah, I guess so.
The shift to remote work left a lot of these companies rethinking their need for all that office space.
Makes sense. I mean, a lot of people are still working from home, at least part of the time.
Exactly. And so you've got all these developers trying to figure out what to do with these giant empty buildings.
So they're just sitting on these properties that aren't generating any income.
Right. And they've tried converting offices into apartments, which makes sense in some cases.
Yeah.
But it doesn't solve the whole problem. And that's where vertical farming comes in.
Okay, so for those of us who haven't quite caught up to the future yet, break down what vertical farming actually is.
Well, it's pretty much what it sounds like. You're growing crops vertically in stacked layers, often indoors.
So instead of those sprawling fields miles away, we could have these towers of fresh produce right in the heart of cities.
Exactly. And that local element is a huge advantage for urban areas. Less reliance on long-haul trucking, meaning fewer carbon emissions, and of course, fresher food.
Fewer trucks clogging up my commute, and less guilt about my grocery list. I like where this is going.
Right.
But why are these empty office buildings such a good fit for vertical farms? Couldn't they just build these farms from scratch?
I mean, they could, but new construction comes with its own set of costs and delays.
Oh, I see.
Office buildings, on the other hand, already have a lot of the infrastructure in place, things like power, water, and even climate control systems.
Oh, so they're kind of ready-made to be transformed.
Exactly. Plus, vertical farming setups are often modular and adaptable, so they can fit into all sorts of spaces.
Like a giant Lego set for growing food?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
And, the article actually quotes someone saying that these buildings were practically waiting for a second life as urban farms.
Who said that?
A guy named Warren C. He's a real estate financing expert.
Okay.
And he said, if there is anything that every city hates, it's empty properties and premises that don't generate economic growth. Vertical farming may very well turn out to be a cost-effective way to reuse vacant office buildings.
So solve the problem of empty offices and create a more sustainable food system. Seems like a pretty sweet deal.
It does seem that way, but, it's not all sunshine and roses.
Oh,
Vertical farming does come with its own set of challenges.
challenges. Huh. I was just starting to picture my rooftop salad bar. What are we talking about here?
Well, one of the biggest hurdles is the cost of energy.
Mm-hmm.
These vertical farms need a lot of power for lighting and climate control, and with the recent energy price hikes, that can really eat into their profits.
Yeah, I can see how that would be a problem. And with interest rates going up, it's probably not the easiest time to be financing these big projects.
Exactly. And in fact, the article mentioned a couple of high-profile vertical farms that are currently facing some financial difficulties. Plenty Compton Farm in California and Bowery Farming in New York.
Interesting. So maybe it's not as easy as just plugging in a few grow lights and watching the lettuce sprout.
You got it.
But are these just growing pains for a new industry? Or are these challenges a sign that vertical farming might not be as viable as we thought?
Well, it's still early days, and there's a lot of optimism in the field.
Optimism high, even with these financial hurdles we're talking about. What's making people so hopeful?
Well, for one thing, the sustainability benefits are hard to ignore. I mean, the article mentioned that vertical farms can use up to 90% less water than traditional agriculture.
90% less? That's pretty incredible.
It is. And when you factor in things like the reduced transportation needs, the limited land footprint, it's not hard to see why a lot of people are excited about the potential of vertical farming.
So less water, fewer trucks on the road, and maybe even turning those concrete jungles into something a little greener.
Exactly. And it's not just about the benefits we see today. The future of vertical farming looks even brighter as technology continues to evolve.
Oh, now you're talking. Tell me more about these advancements. What's on the horizon?
Well, one area where we're seeing a lot of progress is in lighting technology. You know how we talked about energy costs being a major challenge?
Yeah.
Well, new LED technologies and even fiber optics are making these lighting systems much more efficient.
So less energy wasted means lower costs and a smaller environmental footprint. I like it.
Exactly. It's a win-win.
Now, the article also mentions something called a circular bioeconomy. What in the world is that?
It does sound a little sci-fi, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it's a concept that's gaining traction in a lot of industries, including agriculture. Basically, it's about creating a closed-loop system where waste is minimized and resources are reused as much as possible.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Paint me a picture. How would that work in a vertical farm?
Imagine this, the leftover bits of plants from the harvest, the stems, the leaves, things like that. Instead of being discarded, they're used to create compost to nourish the next round of crops.
Okay.
Or maybe they're even used to generate bioenergy to power the farm itself.
Wow, so it's like nature's own recycling program, but on a high-tech scale.
Exactly, and it's these kinds of innovations that are helping to make vertical farming more sustainable and more efficient.
It seems like vertical farming is constantly evolving, finding new ways to be better.
And it needs to, because the world is facing some pretty serious challenges. Climate change, population growth, resource scarcity. We need to find new ways to produce food, and vertical farming has the potential to be a real game changer.
It's exciting to think about these empty office buildings being transformed into these bustling hubs of food production.
Yeah.
It almost feels like a scene from a futuristic movie.
It does, doesn't it? But it's happening right now.
It is, and it really makes you wonder if we can turn empty offices into farms. What other unconventional spaces could be repurposed in similar ways?
That's a great question, and it's something that a lot of urban planners are already thinking about.
Really?
Oh yeah, we're seeing vertical farms popping up in former warehouses, shipping containers, even underground tunnels. There's a growing awareness that we need to produce food closer to where it's consumed, reduce our reliance on these long supply chains, and vertical farming is playing a key role in that shift.
It's like a whole new frontier is opening up.
It is.
Well, this deep dive has been fascinating. I have to admit, I was a little skeptical at first.
Yeah.
But you've really opened my eyes to the potential of vertical farming.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. It's definitely an industry to watch.
It feels like more than just a trend. It's a potential revolution in how we think about food production in the 21st century. But what about you, listener? Are you picturing a vertical farm popping up in your city? What kind of impact do you think it could have on your community and your own life? You know, it's pretty wild to think that those sterile office spaces could become these vibrant hubs of life.
I know, right? It's like we're hardwired to connect with nature even in the middle of a concrete jungle.
Totally. And it's not just about feeling good. It's about having access to fresh, local food that didn't have to travel hundreds of miles to get to your plate.
Exactly. And think about what that could mean for local economies. New jobs, created communities, revitalized.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen rooftop gardens popping up in some cities, which is really cool. But this is like taking to a whole other level.
It really is. And I think it's more than just the practicalities of food production. It's about changing the way we think about our cities.
Like, we don't have to just accept these concrete jungles as the norm. We can create spaces that are both functional and beautiful, productive and inspiring.
Exactly. It's about embracing innovation, challenging the status quo. I mean, if we can turn empty offices into farms, what else can we do?
That's a really good question. What other spaces or systems in your community could be reimagined?
It could be anything, an abandoned factory, a vacant lot, even a corner of your backyard.
The possibilities are endless.
We talk a lot about sustainability, but this is a tangible example of how we can actually make a difference.
It all starts with being willing to question the way things are and believing that we can do better.
That's what it's all about.
And that's what the deep dive is all about, exploring those possibilities, challenging assumptions, and hopefully inspiring you to dig a little deeper into the world around you.
So the next time you walk by an empty office building, don't just see a vacant space.
Yeah.
See an opportunity for innovation, for sustainability, for a healthier and more connected future.
Thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of vertical farming.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those imaginations growing.